So, in my Sparks review, I noted how impressed I am of Moondrop for their great execution of a true wireless product, for their first time no less. So, when they made another one, and it's even cheaper, and it has active noise cancelling, I had to get it in to see what it's like. So today, we'll be looking at the Moondrop Nekocake, their latest true wireless sub offering, promising noise cancellation at a cheap price and hopefully bringing Moondrop sound wirelessly to the masses. So let's see if this Moondrop Nekocake is worth your money.
This time around, the box for the Moondrop Nekocake is pretty basic. It's the typical white cardboard outer sleeve, but of course we've got the Moondrop waifu in the front. It's kind of pixelated, so it doesn't look that great, but that armpit though. And in the back is the specifications as usual. Of course, when you slide out the outer sleeve, you get the black inner box. It actually has a slight glittery texture. Looks very nice, but it's actually quite subtle. She got the Moondrop logo on the top. In the top bit, you are presented with the Moondrop Nekocakes in the insert, and below there is the charging case wrapped in some plastic wrapping.
Yeah, the insert material for this is just some plastic thing. Kind of reminds me of the stuff the KZ uses. Ugh. Pretty bad, but I guess you can excuse it for the price.
Removing the admittedly cheap insert, you are presented with a pack of ear tips for the Moondrop Nekocake. These are tips with an oval shaped opening and stem made to fit the Nekocake's oval nozzle. They are shorter than your usual ear tips with a grippy material. You get one small, two mediums, and one pair of large tips in total.
Although these tips are made for the Nekocakes, because of the shallow fit, I cannot recommend them to be used with it. You would probably do better to just replace them right after you buy the Nekocake, to be honest.
And then you get your standard USB Type-C cable. What else can I say but that it works. Finally, you get a warranty card printed in Chinese and English, as well as actually quite a thick instruction manual that comes in Chinese, English, and finally Japanese. It's actually quite good. It's not as extensive as the piles of paper that came with the Sparks, but still some care went into making this instruction manual, and I am impressed. You get a white case for the Moondrop Nekocake with the Nekocake text on the top of the lid, as well as a Nekocake sort of icon / logo in the front of the case. Now we come to the case. It uses white plastic. It is matte, but because it's just plastic, the sort of shine of the plastic, it still shows through, making it look and feel not so premium. The Nekocake case only has one LED and it shines green whenever you close the case or when pressing the function button to indicate that there's still battery. It shines orange to indicate low battery and flashes orange when charging. The charging port is located at the bottom, which to be honest I don't like. It just sort of sits flush to the case, so I feel like this will increase the chance of dust getting in and breaking it. Not to mention that you can no longer charge with the case standing up, but you have to put it on flat like this. Compared to the Sparks case, the Nekocake's case is narrower, making it a little easier to hold. Despite that, the Nekocake case is lighter feeling, and combined with the lack of the soft touch coating, making it feel cheaper than the case for the Sparks. Though I guess it's only fair since the thing is like half the price of the Sparks. The Moondrop Nekocake definitely takes inspiration from the AirPods form factor, to say the least. Personally, I don't really like this design because it has always seemed a little goofy to me. But it is light and mostly easy to wear compared to the Sparks. My gripe with this design mostly comes from the stem. Of all the things to learn from Apple, why did you learn this, Moondrop? Like the oval shape of the nozzle, it doesn't stop you from fitting normal air tips in, but it is so shallow to wear, especially with the stock tips. With said stock tips and like the active noise cancelling off, the Nekocake has basically the same isolation as earbuds, until you replace them with better tips. The thing that can't be fixed is the combo of this design meant for shallow tips and the charging case. It just all adds up. Basically, you can't use really too long or too big of tips because they just won't slip into this charging case right. Luckily, there is some tolerance, and most tips up to normal size will work, with admittedly a bit of finesse.
The Nekocake advertises 4 hours of battery on the earphones themselves, and it hits that target pretty much. With ANC on, I didn't notice like drastically increased battery drain, so that's all good. The case, it lists a 380 milliamp battery, and usually I got a good 4 or 5 charges worth of the Nekocakes before the case needs to be charged. So that number also seems roughly in line with it. Seems correct. Charging time for the case is a little slow, maybe roughly an hour, and about the same amount of time, maybe a bit more, for the Nekocake to be juiced up. The pairing process, it's as usual, right? You take the Nekocakes out of the case, it should appear on your phone, you press it to pair, and you're ready to go. If you only use one bud at a time and it loses pairing with the phone, the button on the case, it also acts as a reset button to help repair the 2 buds together.
Because the Nekocakes themselves do not have any indicator lights, these are mic holes, not indicator lights. You basically just have to rely on voice prompts to control them. But Moondrop has elected to add some personality into this by using the voice of their one and only waifu, Mitsuki Yuki. If Dankpot's Bluetooth speaker has the
Bluetooth mode,
That sounded hot.
then with the Nekocake you will hear
Connected.
when successfully paired, and as well as indications of
ANC on. ANC off.
when toggling the noise cancellation, and a slightly saddened
Disconnected.
when you disconnect. You also have the accompanying Moondrop Link app, of course. It does look a little Spartan, but allows you to change some of the functionality on the touch area. You also have some custom tunings, of course, which I will get to later.
So at this price, beyond the ANC, the Nekocake doesn't have much else. It lacks the transparency mode, although like I said, on the stock ear tips, its isolation is pretty much like an earbud. And it has no waterproofing. But since the Bluetooth chip inside the Nekocake is not from Qualcomm, rather like an in-house one, you only do get SBC and AAC codec support. But for my testing, this didn't actively hurt the sound quality, at least noticeably. And of course, the killer feature of the Nekocake, it's the ANC. I've got to admit, I haven't seen a TWS with ANC at this price, so it's quite impressive that Moondrop is able to include it here. And that's actually a catchy phrase, like TWS with the ANC, oots, 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 TWS with the ANC, oots, 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 TWS with the ANC, oots, 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 oots. Okay, we're back. So, the ANC, it's alright for the price. It's mostly targeting stuff like the humming sounds of fans and engines, and quite frankly, it does a good job at that. I was going through a tunnel, and the Nekocake successfully filtered out the really irritating humming noise in the tunnel. And I also didn't hear any degradation of sound quality when ANC is turned on. However, there are some definite weaknesses. First is the shallow fit, as I said earlier. If you don't use better tips, then running Nekocake with the ANC off is tantamount to earbud levels of isolation, and with ANC on, it's maybe slightly worse than just wearing an IEM with normal sized ear tips. Though, of course, this is improved when paired with better ear tips, and I can say that the ANC is indeed quite effective at what it's doing. Secondly, I can hear a slight hiss when ANC mode is on. It really isn't that prevalent unless you don't play any music and just listen carefully to a Nekocake, but it is there. Finally, whilst the Nekocake does a good job eliminating low frequency vibrations and reverberations, it kinda sucks at filtering wind noise, if it does at all. On a windy drive with ANC on, you will just hear wind noise amplified and piped into your ears. Not pleasant. And if you rub your finger on the mic hole, you will also hear scratchy noises. The Nekocake's microphone is in line with most other true wireless sets in that it works, but it's worse than even your phone mic. My voice is a little muffled through calls, but it is enough to make basic conversations mostly decently. Not much else to report on this front. As of this review, I am on Moondrop Nekocake firmware 1.0.0, and I'll be using the default or balanced tuning, but I will give you a brief summary of what the other tunings do. The Moondrop Classic tuning. It kinda makes the volume smaller and makes everything just kinda worse. This is definitely not Moondrop Classic, as the title entails. I don't know what's going on here. X Dynamic boosts the mid bass and it warms up the sound even more, getting the Nekocake even closer to an earbud type sound, but it also kills some separation in the process. The no bass preset. I can still hear bass in the no bass preset, so this thing has failed. The end. When Basto. What? Apparently this is meant to ape the Sennheiser house sound. It's basically another slight bass boost, but this time with also some weird mid suck outs. Not good. So yeah, basically all of these custom tunings are gimmicky and I won't be using them. It's there for you to play with, but I'll stick to the default, thanks. And so with that, let's get into the sound of the Moondrop Nekocake. Yeah, I want to say that you have the usual Moondrop sound in the Nekocake, but the story is a little more complicated than that. So starting with the bass, right? The bass of the Nekocake, it's just not up to the usual Moondrop standard. It's got some impact, sure, but it's kind of weak and too soft to portray a good amount of bass detail. There's an emphasis for mid bass over sub bass, I would say. The rumble is also pretty anemic, and the shallow fit definitely does not do it any favors. It's not to say that it's bad, but I'd be lying if I said I'm not a little disappointed. Now the mid-range of the Moondrop Nekocake is done up to be much more warm than usual. To the point where it sounds, like I said before, it sounds a lot closer to an earbuds type of sound than, being an earphone that it is. I don't hate it though, because it is quite well done, and it doesn't sound so warm to the point of being overbearing. Just enough to be intimate, but not too thick and syrupy. The way these mids are done means that the Nekocake will play well with most genres and being generally easy to listen, as well as not fatiguing. My gripe with this is that it makes vocals a little too distant. Other Moondrop offerings make the vocals sit a little behind, but it's ever present. Whereas with the Nekocake, it does seem a little buried underneath all the other elements of music. And the warming up of this lower mid-range, it's further reducing the separation and imaging capabilities of the Nekocake, unfortunately. So Moondrop played it safe with this treble range, and you have the usual secondary treatment of highs back again. In that it is mostly subtle, it sits behind the mids and bass just to give some vibrance and sparkle. I didn't hear any sibilants or any weird resonance peaks from the high end of the Nekocake, so it gets a pass here. Airiness is thankfully quite adequate as well, though nothing groundbreaking. Although it is warmer sounding than other Moondrop products, the Nekocake surprisingly has better than average soundstage. Probably due to the shallow fit being closer to an earbud fit than an earphone, but hey, I can't argue with the results. The soundstage height is meh, though not surprising for the price. Technicalities of the Moondrop Nekocake is a bit worse than usual. There's a bit more smearing of details, but note weight is certainly thicker due to the tuning, a little too thick. And there's just less resolution than I would have wanted. Imaging is only below average, and in complex songs, the Nekocake does exhibit some slight compression of musical elements, though thankfully not too much. Overall, the technical ability of the Nekocake is just enough to pass the bar, but really not much more. The Moondrop Sparks build is just better than the Nekocake. It looks and feels better basically, and like I said, I prefer the unibody look over the AirPods type design of the Nekocake. However, the Sparks feels less comfortable in my ear, whilst the Nekocake, even though it's got a shallow fit, the boba shape does indeed conform to my ears better. Yeah, the Sparks does not have any of the ANC capabilities of the Nekocake, but because of the deep fit, it isn't faring that bad, honestly. A regrettable omission, but not an unacceptable one. Sound-wise, yeah, the Sparks wins hands down. The bass is more impactful, the mids have better separation and finesse, the highs have more clarity. The Nekocake isn't that bad, but when compared to the Sparks, then yeah, it's definitely a noticeable downgrade in sound quality. It's another pick your poison situation, I think. Do you want to bear with a less comfortable fit, bare bones features, and higher prices for extra sound quality with the Sparks? Or do you sacrifice on the sound department for a cheaper price tag with ANC for the Nekocake? Fidelity focused true wireless or general casual listening true wireless set? You decide. The Buds Plus have a better build owing to its price, and its feature set is a little more complete. What with the more polished Samsung app with stuff like transparency mode and a low latency like gaming mode if you care about that, as well as water resistance. The Nekocake though, it does take a small win for its ANC though. Sound wise again, the Buds Plus wins in technicalities, but I find myself actually liking the Nekocake more because its upper mids isn't ever so grainy as the Buds Plus upper mids are. And although the Buds Plus has better technical abilities, it's not good enough like the Sparks to supplant IEMs at the same price. So if it's just enough for casual listening anyways, then I mean the Nekocake certainly seems like the better deal, and in that context, it does put up quite a decent fight. I think Moondrop did a good job branching out their true wireless segment. They have the audiophile oriented Sparks, and now they make the lower end Nekocake for people wanting a more general use case true wireless set. At least for now, they are, as far as I know, the cheapest TWS with the ANC, right? Even if the ANC is only okay, it's still a little more than nothing. But I do wish that they did better with the build quality and did not hamper the sound, as these will be weaknesses that anyone looking to buy the Nekocake will have to carefully deliberate over.
Guys, this is Lumerion here, so I'm trying to reach like 50 subs for this channel at the end of the year, so I really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. And otherwise, thank you for watching, and bye-bye.